My life has never been a fairy tale, but in recent years, it has become a nightmare. My name is Samantha, and I used to be an ordinary person with dreams and ambitions. Now, I feel like I'm just surviving day by day. Depression has consumed me in a way I never thought possible. It all started 6 months ago when I lost my job. It was a monotonous office job with little prospect, but it was enough to pay the bills. Without it, everything fell apart. Debts began to accumulate quickly. First, it was basic utilities like electricity and water. Then, the overdue rent and the loans I took out to try to get back on my feet. Each attempt to get up seemed to sink me even further. I felt like I was trapped in a bottomless pit where the sunlight was just a distant memory. My emotional state gradually worsened. I woke up every day with a sense of emptiness in my chest, a constant pain that couldn't be alleviated. Anxiety became my constant companion, an invisible weight crushing me mercilessly. I started avoiding friends and family, ashamed of my situation and unable to find comfort in their words. I spent most of my days lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in dark thoughts. My mind was a maze of anguish and despair. Sometimes, I imagined what it would be like if everything just ended, if I could escape this endless pain. But somehow, there was still a spark of hope in me, a desire to find a way out, a way to rebuild my life, and maybe even find love. It was during one of these lonely nights, while aimlessly browsing Instagram, that I found Kat's profile. She was stunning, a blonde with blue eyes who seemed to radiate happiness and success. Each photo was a window into a world of glamour and luxury, something that seemed unattainable for someone like me. But her words were different. She presented herself as a life coach with divine powers, someone who helped people find the path to happiness and success. And everything she said in her reels and stories seemed to speak directly to me. Kat's promises gave me new hope. I bought one of her online consultations, saving every penny I could to pay for what I believed to be my last chance to change my life. Her advice was inspiring, and everything she said with her sweet voice resonated in my soul, as if she were an angel, and I began to feel a slight improvement in my mood. It was then that in the last session, she invited me to move into her house, as we had become friends during these sessions. She invited me, promising a life of glamour, surrounded by celebrities and opportunities. The idea of escaping my dark reality and diving into a world of dreams was irresistible. With all my strength, I clung to that hope and accepted Kat's invitation. I left behind my miserable life, believing I was on my way to a new beginning. Little did I know that I was walking straight into the clutches of an even more terrible nightmare. The decision to move into Kat's house was made in a mix of excitement and desperation. She sent me the plane ticket, and in the blink of an eye, I was boarding a flight to what I believed to be the start of a new life. I left behind the small town that had become a place of suffering and hopelessness in recent years. As the plane took off, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. Upon landing, Kat was waiting for me at the airport. She was even more stunning in person, her blonde hair shining in the sunlight and her blue eyes seeming to see through me. She greeted me with a warm hug and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Immediately, I felt a connection with her, as if I had found someone who genuinely cared. We drove to her house in a luxurious sports car. As we approached, my heart beat faster. Kat lived in a mansion situated in an exclusive neighborhood, where each house looked like it came out of an architecture magazine. When we arrived, we were greeted by wrought iron gates that opened automatically, revealing the majestic residence behind them. Kat's house was impressive. The facade was made of white stone, with huge windows that let the sunlight flood the interiors. Entering, I was enveloped by a sense of opulence. The entrance hall had a high ceiling, decorated with a crystal chandelier that shone intensely. The marble floor gleamed under my feet, and every detail, from the ornate columns to the carefully chosen furniture, exuded wealth. Kat gave me a tour of the house, and each room was more impressive than the last. The living room had panoramic windows offering a stunning view of the perfectly manicured garden, with elegant fountains and statues scattered all around. There was a library filled with rare books, a gourmet kitchen that looked like it came out of a cooking show, and a home theater with soft leather seats and a state-of-the-art sound system. My room was a dream. The king-size bed had silk sheets and pillows that felt like clouds. There was a closet big enough to be a separate room, already stocked with designer clothes. The attached suite had a jacuzzi and a shower with multiple jets, something I never imagined having in my life. At night, we dined on the veranda, with a breathtaking view of the city's lights in the distance. Kat seemed to know every detail of my life and did everything to make me feel at ease. She talked about the glamorous events we would attend, the influential people we would meet, and the luxurious life that would be my new reality. As I lay in bed that first night, a feeling of gratitude and relief washed over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had found a home. But at the same time, a small voice inside me whispered a warning, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. I ignored it, attributing it to the remnants of my old anxiety. But little did I know that this superficial perfection hid dark secrets, and that Kat's true face was about to be revealed. In the first few days at Kat's house, I was enveloped by the atmosphere of luxury and glamour. The routine was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Breakfast served by a private chef, city tours in sports cars, and champagne-filled nights at exclusive parties. Kat introduced me as her protege, and the people around us seemed fascinated by her magnetic presence. However, I soon began to notice small things that made me uncomfortable. On the first day, while exploring the house alone, I heard muffled crying coming from one of the upstairs rooms. I stood still for a moment, trying to understand what was happening. When I went to investigate, Kat suddenly appeared, smiling and leading me back to the living room, saying she wanted to show me something. I ignored the incident, convinced that I must have imagined it. Another time, while in the library, I found a diary belonging to one of the girls who lived there. It was hidden behind a row of books. I quickly flipped through a few pages and realized the entries were filled with laments about homesickness and fear. Before I could read more, I heard footsteps and hid the diary back. That brief glimpse left me uneasy, but I decided not to mention anything to Kat. The house housed 3 other girls, all stunning and with stories similar to mine. There was Emily, a young aspiring model with a charming smile but always slightly sad eyes. Sarah, an up-and-coming actress, had vibrant energy but often seemed distant. And lastly, Lisa, a former ballet dancer with impeccable posture but a constant look of worry. All seemed to respect Kat in a way that bordered on reverence, but there was a palpable tension in their eyes. One night, during dinner, Kat gathered us in the main dining room. The table was elegantly decorated, and the soft lights created an almost ethereal atmosphere. We were casually chatting when Kat started talking about loyalty and trust. She stressed the importance of being honest with each other and with her. There was something in the way she spoke that made me feel uncomfortable, but I couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. After dinner, as the other girls went up to their rooms, Kat called me for a private conversation. We sat on the veranda, and she looked deeply into my eyes, as if trying to see into my soul. "Samantha, I trust you," she said softly. "I hope you trust me too. This house is a refuge, a place where we can all grow and thrive, but it's important that you follow the rules." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. There was something almost hypnotic in the way Kat spoke, a mix of sweetness and authority that left me torn between admiration and fear. She got up, touched my shoulder, and wished me good night, leaving me alone with my confused thoughts. In the following weeks, I noticed other strange signs. There were corridors in the house that always seemed locked, and doors that creaked at night, as if someone was secretly opening and closing them. The girls seemed to avoid certain subjects and changed the topic whenever Kat wasn't present. Emily, in particular, seemed to want to tell me something but always backed away at the last moment, as if she were afraid. Even with these unease, life at Kat's house was too tempting to openly question. I had new clothes, a comfortable bed, delicious food, and a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in a long time. I decided to ignore my instincts and trust Kat, believing that perhaps my fears were just remnants of my old life of insecurity and anxiety. However, deep down, the small voice inside me continued to whisper that something was terribly wrong. The following days were a whirlwind of events and introductions. Kat kept her promise to introduce me to her social circle, a network of people as glamorous as she was. The first party I was invited to was held in an even bigger mansion than Kat's, owned by a famous film producer. The night was warm, and the garden was illuminated by thousands of tiny white lights, as if the stars had descended from the sky to watch the party. Impeccably uniformed waiters served champagne and canapes while a band played live jazz. Kat introduced me to several celebrities, actors, models, and influential businessmen. Each of them seemed enchanted by her, like moths attracted to a bright light. I met Rachel, an actress famous for her roles in action movies, who looked like a goddess in her red silk dress. She greeted me warmly, interested in knowing more about me. Then there was Mark, an award-winning director, who gave me advice on how to stand out in the entertainment industry. Kat didn't leave my side, always introducing me as her new protege. At one point, I was introduced to a group of young actors who were beginning to gain notoriety. Among them was Daniel, an actor whose career was skyrocketing. He was charming, with an easy smile and a contagious laugh. We spent much of the night talking, and I felt incredibly welcomed, as if I were finally finding my place in the world. As the night wore on, Kat made sure to show me the benefits of being in that circle. She took me to a private room where a small group of people was gathered around a table, discussing future projects and opportunities. "This is the kind of connection you can have," she said, her eyes shining with a mix of ambition and satisfaction. "Here, you can achieve anything you desire." I left that party feeling euphoric, as if I were floating. Kat's promises were materializing before my eyes, and the idea of a life of luxury and glamour seemed increasingly within reach. I began attending more events, always accompanied by Kat, always introduced to new influential people. Each meeting made me feel more part of that dazzling world. However, amid all this excitement, small warning signs continued to appear. During a party at a famous businessman's house, I found Sarah in a corner, her eyes red from crying. When I asked what had happened, she quickly composed herself and told me it was just the stress of a new project. But her expression was one of fear, something that deeply troubled me. Another time, while at a party at a music mogul's house, I saw Lisa talking discreetly with an older man. She looked nervous, constantly looking around as if expecting someone to interrupt her at any moment. When I tried to approach her to talk, she quickly moved away, murmuring some excuse. Despite these unease, I continued to get more involved in that world. Kat was a skilled mentor, always encouraging me and showing me the way to success. She organized photo sessions, meetings with agents, and even small appearances at events covered by the media. Each day was a new opportunity to shine, to get closer to the dream I had begun to believe was possible. But as I delved deeper into the life of luxury and glamour, the small voice inside me continued to whisper that something was wrong. Ignoring the signs became more difficult, but I was determined to seize this chance, to believe that Kat really wanted the best for me. It was then that, at one of these parties, I met a celebrity who changed everything. Amanda, a former model who now worked as a businesswoman, seemed different from the other people I had met. There was a sadness in her eyes that contrasted with the smile she displayed. When Kat stepped away to talk to other guests, Amanda approached me and, with a serious look, said, "Be careful, Samantha. Not everything that glitters is gold. Remember that." These words stayed engraved in my mind, and from that moment on, I began to realize that the shine of that luxurious life could hide deep shadows. The transition from a life of glamour to a nightmare began subtly. In the first few days after Amanda's warning, I tried to ignore the growing unease in my chest. I continued attending parties and events, staying close to Kat and the social circle she had introduced me to. However, small cracks began to appear in the perfect facade she maintained. It all started with one particular party, held at Kat's mansion. The house was more exuberant than ever, decorated with exotic flowers and illuminated by sparkling chandeliers. The night was in full swing when Kat approached me with a smile that, for the first time, seemed more like a grimace. She pulled me aside to an isolated corner of the room, away from prying eyes. "Samantha, we need to talk about your contributions to the house," she said, the usual sweetness in her voice now tinged with something colder. "You've been enjoying a lot of what we offer here, and it's time to start giving back." I was confused. "Contribute? What do you mean?" Kat sighed, as if she were talking to a slow child. "There are ways you can be useful, Samantha. The life of luxury is not free. We need you to participate in some activities, small favors for our influential friends." Before I could respond, Kat was called by a group of guests, leaving me alone with a growing sense of unease. The party continued, but I could no longer enjoy it. I felt watched, as if everyone around me knew something I didn't. That night, I was awakened by a strange sound. I got up and, driven by curiosity, followed the noise to one of the locked corridors. To my surprise, the door was ajar. I peeked through the crack and saw Kat in the middle of a group of men, all appearing to be in an altered state. The atmosphere had a heavy air, charged with an energy that made my skin crawl. Kat was at the center, her dominant posture and voice laden with authority. She spoke to the men as if they were her subjects, giving orders and making demands. Something in her voice, almost hypnotic, held everyone there, and I realized that she was not just a charismatic hostess, but a skilled manipulator. In the following days, Kat's demands became more frequent and invasive. She started requiring me to attend meetings with her friends, influential men who expected more than just pleasant conversation. When I tried to refuse, Kat became cold and threatening. "Samantha, you must understand that your place here depends on your cooperation," she said once, with a scary calmness. "If you can't follow the rules, there may no longer be a place for you in this house. Remember how your life was before. Do you want to go back to that life where you felt alone and hopeless? Remember that you owe everything to me because I took you out of the abyss." The psychological manipulation intensified. Kat began controlling my activities, monitoring my contacts, and restricting my outings. Every move I made seemed to be under surveillance, and I felt her oppressive presence in every corner of the house. She used the other girls as an example, showing what happened to those who didn't conform to her expectations. Sarah, Emily, and Lisa were increasingly apathetic, like puppets without their own will. Once, while in the library, Emily approached me. Her eyes were full of tears, but she kept her voice low. "Samantha, you need to get out of here. Kat is not who you think she is. She destroys people." Before I could ask more, Kat entered the room, and Emily quickly moved away like a frightened animal. Kat gave me a penetrating look, and at that moment, I realized how deep her control over all of us was. Kat's true nature was that of a predator, using her beauty and charisma to lure and control. The promises of luxury and glamour were a trap, a golden snare hiding sharp thorns. And I, like the others, was caught in her web, struggling to find a way to escape before it was too late. From that moment on, I decided I needed to find a way out of that house. But I knew it wouldn't be easy because Kat didn't let anyone leave easily. The parties, the celebrities, the luxury, all of it was a facade. Kat's true face was much darker and more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. The weeks that followed were a blur of manipulation and control. I was trapped in a vicious cycle of parties and meetings, increasingly aware that the glamorous life Kat promised was just a facade. But the worst was yet to come, something that would change my perception of Kat forever. It all began on a particularly cold night when Kat announced that there would be a special event at the mansion. The girls were more tense than usual, exchanging nervous glances and whispering among themselves. Kat, on the other hand, was radiant, her blue eyes shining with an almost feverish intensity. "Tonight is very important, girls," she said, gathering us in the living room before the event started. "It's an opportunity to show our devotion and commitment." Kat's words were enigmatic, but the way she spoke made me uneasy. We were instructed to wear specific clothes, long white dresses that looked more like ceremonial attire than party outfits. The air was charged with a palpable tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. As the night progressed, we were taken to an underground hall I had never seen before. The environment was cold and damp, with stone walls illuminated by flickering candles. In the center of the hall was a large circle drawn on the floor, adorned with strange and incomprehensible symbols. Kat was at the center of the circle, her graceful movements and hypnotic voice conducting what seemed to be a ceremony. Around her, men and women in black robes moved in sync, chanting in an ancient and unknown language to me. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with a dark energy that made my skin crawl. I was positioned near the circle, with a clear view of what was happening. At first, I was paralyzed, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what I was witnessing. The chants grew in intensity, and Kat began making elaborate gestures with her hands, as if she were summoning something from the depths of the earth. Suddenly, one of the girls, Lisa, was brought to the center of the circle. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she was visibly trembling. Kat approached her, murmuring soft words that seemed to calm her, but there was something sinister in the way she held her. Before I could process what was happening, Kat made a sign, and two of the robed men held Lisa by the arms. What happened next was so horrifying that my mind struggled to accept it as real. Kat withdrew an ornate dagger from within her robe and, with a swift movement, cut Lisa's arm, letting the blood flow into the circle. Lisa screamed, a sound that echoed through the hall and reverberated inside me. The scene before me seemed like a mix of nightmare and distorted reality. Lisa's blood fed the symbols on the floor, which began to glow with a pulsating red light. Kat continued her chants, her voice now mixed with Lisa's cries and sobs. I wanted to run, scream, do anything to stop it, but my feet were stuck in place as if fear had turned into invisible chains. The ritual continued for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, Kat raised the dagger and uttered one last phrase in her arcane language. The hall was filled with deafening silence, followed by a tremor that ran through the floor beneath my feet. The light from the symbols slowly faded, and Kat stood up, triumphant, while Lisa was carried away, unconscious and with the cut on her arm. When the ritual ended, Kat approached me, her eyes still shining with that frightening intensity. You see, Samantha, she said softly, the power we have here, the power you can have if you completely surrender. I was in shock, unable to process her words. All I knew was that I needed to get out of there, but looking around, I realized that escaping wouldn't be easy. Kat and her followers had revealed their true nature, and now, more than ever, I knew I was trapped in something far more sinister than I could have imagined. Kat's house was not a refuge, it was a prison, and the macabre rituals were just the beginning of the horrors I would have to face if I wanted to survive and escape the clutches of that demonic woman. After that terrifying night, everything changed. Kat's mask had fallen, revealing the true monster behind her angelic beauty. The shock and terror of the ritual still haunted my dreams, but the reality I faced awake was equally horrific. Kat intensified her control over me, using increasingly more methods of manipulation and intimidation to force me to participate in her dark activities. The morning after the ritual, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest. The house, which once seemed like a dream palace, had now turned into an oppressive prison. The sunlight entering through the windows couldn't dissipate the shadows nesting in every corner. The other girls were quieter than usual, their faces marked by fear and resignation. Kat wasted no time. She called me for a private conversation in her office, a luxuriously decorated room now imbued with an aura of danger. She sat at her desk, looking at me with those blue eyes that I now knew hid something terrible. Samantha, she began, her voice soft and controlled, it's time for you to become an active participant in our ceremonies. Your commitment is crucial to our community. I can't, I stammered, my voice weak. I can't be part of this. Kat's smile was cold and calculated. You have no choice, Samantha. From the moment you entered this house, you committed to us. Running away is not an option, and resisting will only make things more difficult for you. She got up and walked over to me, her presence overwhelming. There is something else you need to do, she continued. We need you to start working for our influential friends. They pay well for company and other services. It's an essential part of what we do here. The idea of prostituting myself filled me with repulsion and despair. No, I can't do that, I said, trying to keep my composure. That's not what I expected when I came here. Kat leaned closer, her face inches from mine. You have no idea what you expected, Samantha, but you will do whatever is necessary for your own good. In the days that followed, I was subjected to a series of psychological pressures. Kat isolated me from the other girls, placing me under constant surveillance. She woke me in the middle of the night, demanding my presence in private meetings with her associates. The men she introduced me to were powerful and unscrupulous, and the way they looked at me made me feel like merchandise. One night, I was taken to an exclusive club where I was introduced to a group of businessmen and politicians. Kat was by my side, always smiling, but with absolute control over my every move. The men asked me personal questions, touched me invasively, and suggested activities I preferred not to think about. I felt caged, desperate to find a way out. The pressure to participate in the rituals also increased. Kat forced me to watch the preparations, trying to familiarize me with the chants and symbols. Every time I refused to participate, she escalated the threats. You know what happened to Lisa, she would say, the implicit threat in her words. You don't want to end up like her. My only company was Emily, who seemed as lost as I was. One night, while we were in the garden, she approached me and whispered, "We need to get out of here, Samantha. Kat is destroying us, but we need to be careful." We began planning our escape in secret, trying to find a gap in Kat's relentless surveillance. But we knew it would be risky. Every step we took was permeated with fear. Every decision seemed to lead to another dead end. The feeling of being trapped increased every day. Despair settled in my heart, but at the same time, a small flame of determination began to grow. I couldn't let Kat win. I needed to find a way to escape, to save Emily and the other girls, and finally destroy the empire of terror Kat had built. But I knew the path would be arduous and full of dangers. And while Kat continued to exert her absolute control, I had to play her game, pretend to be submissive while planning my exit. The battle for my freedom was just beginning, and the price to pay would be high. Every day at Kat's house was a battle for sanity. Emily and I kept our escape plans a secret, but we knew that every move was risky. Kat was cunning and always seemed to be one step ahead, her presence constant and oppressive. But then, an unexpected discovery changed everything. One afternoon, while Kat was out at a meeting, I took the opportunity to explore parts of the house that were normally off-limits. The library, with its shelves full of rare books, had caught my attention from the beginning. I was sure that there, among those dusty pages, I could find something that would help me understand Kat better and perhaps find a way to escape. It was while rummaging through the library that I found an old diary hidden behind a row of encyclopedias. The diary belonged to a woman named Margaret Lania, Kat's maiden name. Curious, I began flipping through the yellowed pages, reading about the life of a young woman who grew up in an environment of wealth but also extreme control and abuse. Kat's parents were members of a secret sect called Bohemian Grove, practitioners of dark rituals that included sacrifices and psychological manipulation. As I read, I realized that Kat was not just a victim perpetuating the cycle of abuse. She had embraced the darkness of her childhood, turning it into power. The last chapters of the diary were particularly disturbing, detailing how Kat had eliminated her own parents to take control of the sect and expand it. She had shaped her angelic beauty into a weapon to attract and manipulate, building her empire of terror with meticulous precision. This discovery filled me with a mix of horror and determination. I knew I needed to get out of there, but also that escaping would be almost impossible without a solid plan. I shared what I discovered with Emily, who was equally shocked but also more determined to escape. We decided that night we would try to escape, using a secret route we found in the diary. Night came, and we were nervous but resolute. We waited until everyone in the house was asleep. We silently left our rooms, using as little light as possible. The diary mentioned a hidden passage in the basement, which led to an underground tunnel. When we reached the basement, we found the passage and entered the dark, damp tunnel. We were just a few steps from freedom when we heard footsteps behind us. I turned and saw Kat, her blue eyes shining with rage and satisfaction. "Did you really think you could fool me?" Her voice was cold as ice. I tried to run, but Kat was quick. In an instant, she caught up to us and pushed us against the tunnel wall. "You think you can escape from me?" "From me." She screamed, the true face of her psychopathy revealed. "You can't keep doing this, Kat," I said, trying to stay calm. "You need to stop." She laughed, a sound that reverberated off the tunnel's damp walls. "Stop? Do you really think you can stop me? I'm invincible here. This is my house, my domain." The confrontation escalated quickly. Kat, using the ceremonial dagger she always carried, threatened Emily, pressing the blade against her throat. "You'll do as I say, Samantha, or she dies here and now." Fear gripped me, but I knew that giving in meant losing any chance of freedom. "If you hurt her, you'll never have control over us," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "You need us to maintain your power, don't you?" For a moment, I saw a spark of doubt in Kat's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. "You two will come back with me now," she ordered, "and we'll resolve this the right way." With no other choice, we followed Kat back to the house. We were locked in our rooms, under constant surveillance. The escape attempt had failed, but it had given us something even more important, the certainty that we needed to bring Kat down, no matter the cost. And now, with the knowledge of her past, we had a new weapon against her. The true battle was just beginning, and I knew I would need all my courage and intelligence to face the monster Kat truly was. I couldn't fail. Emily, the other girls, and I deserved freedom and justice. And we were willing to fight for it until the end. After the confrontation with Kat, despair hung in the air of the house like a dense fog. The feeling of being constantly watched made it difficult to think of another escape attempt, but it also made it clear that we needed to act quickly. The psychological prison Kat had created was starting to crumble our hopes, but there was a growing determination within me that could not be ignored. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed the help of the other girls, each of them trapped in the same cycle of manipulation and abuse. I began to discreetly approach Sarah and Lisa, telling them about Kat's diary and the horrors she had perpetrated. Their reactions were initially of shock and disbelief, but as we shared our stories, a sense of solidarity emerged. One late afternoon, while Kat was out at an event, I gathered everyone in Emily's room. We closed the door and talked in whispers, knowing that any loud noise could betray us. Emily, Sarah, Lisa, and I united in the promise to find a way to escape that hell. "We have to be smart," Emily said, her voice trembling with urgency. "Kat is cunning and has eyes everywhere. We need a plan she can't predict," added Sarah, looking at us with renewed determination. We decided that the only way out was to cause a big enough distraction to divert Kat's attention and her followers. After much debate, we agreed that the best opportunity would be during one of the rituals, where everyone's presence would be concentrated in the underground hall. We would need a combination of courage, perfect timing, and a bit of luck. Lisa, who had experience in dance and agility, suggested that we could use the tunnels under the house. "There's a hidden passage in the garden that leads to an old sewer," she explained. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance." In the following days, we meticulously prepared our plan. Sarah managed to hide some tools that could be useful to open the passage. Emily was responsible for creating an initial distraction during the ritual, while Lisa and I worked on opening the passage in the garden. We knew it would be dangerous, but the alternative was to remain prisoners under Kat's control. The night of the ritual came faster than we expected. The underground hall was prepared, with candles lit and symbols drawn on the floor. Kat was at the center, as always, radiating an aura of somber authority. The other girls and I were positioned around, our hearts beating fast with anticipation. When the ritual began, Emily did her part, pretending to faint, causing a momentary commotion. Kat and her followers turned to her, trying to understand what was happening. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lisa and I quietly left the hall, heading toward the garden. When we reached the spot indicated by Lisa, we began to work frantically to open the hidden passage. Time seemed to slip through our fingers like sand, each second increasing the pressure on us. Finally, we managed to open the heavy cover, revealing the dark tunnel below. "Let's go," I whispered, pulling Lisa into the tunnel. "We need to be quick." In the tunnel, the darkness was almost total, but we had brought flashlights to guide us. The air was damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed around us. Each step felt like an advance against the despair surrounding us. As we moved forward, we heard voices above us. Kat had noticed our absence and was organizing a search. We needed to speed up. Sarah and Emily found us in the tunnel shortly after, both panting and with wide-eyed fear. "She knows," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent. "We need to keep going." We walked for what seemed like an eternity, our nerves on edge. The tunnel finally led us to an exit in the old sewer, just as Lisa had said. We climbed up a rusty ladder and emerged in an area far from the house, covered by dense trees and bushes. Freedom was ahead of us, but we knew we were not yet safe. We needed a place to hide and plan our next steps. We ran through the forest, hope burning in our hearts and the determination to survive pushing us forward. Finally, we stopped to rest, panting but free. We were far enough from Kat's house that her claws couldn't immediately reach us, but we knew the battle was far from over. Kat wouldn't give up easily, and now we were in her territory. "We will survive," Emily said, her gaze firm and resolute. And we will make sure Kat pays for everything she's done. We nodded in silence, united by the shared experience and the promise of freedom. The real challenge was still to come, but for the first time in a long time, we felt a glimmer of hope, and we were ready to fight for our freedom, no matter what came next. After running for hours, we finally found a small refuge deep in the forest. It was an abandoned cabin, dirty and damp, but at that moment, it seemed like a sanctuary. We breathed a sigh of relief, knowing we were out of Kat's immediate reach, but aware that the danger had not yet passed. We needed a plan to ensure our safety and report Kat's crimes to the authorities. We spent the night awake, taking turns keeping watch. While one of us watched, the others tried to rest, but sleep did not come easily. Our minds were filled with horrible images, and adrenaline still coursed through our veins. In the morning, with the first rays of sun, we began discussing our next steps. "We need to find a police station," Sarah said, her voice firm but laden with exhaustion. "We have to tell everything that happened." "But how?" Emily asked, worried. "Kat has connections everywhere. What if she finds out where we are before we get help?" "We have no choice," I said, trying to stay calm. "We need to take the risk. If we don't report Kat, she will continue destroying lives." We decided to split into smaller groups to increase our chances of finding help without being detected. Emily and I headed toward a road that, according to Lisa, led to a small town a few kilometers away. Sarah and Lisa went in another direction, trying to find a village or farm where they could ask for help. Walking through the forest was difficult. Our bodies were tired, and every sound seemed like a threat. But the hope of freedom pushed us forward. After several hours of walking, we finally spotted a paved road. Hidden among the trees, we waited until a car passed and waved frantically. A kind driver stopped to help us. His concerned expression upon seeing us dirty and injured gave us a glimpse of human compassion we hadn't experienced in a long time. He took us to the nearest town and left us in front of the police station, promising to return with help for Sarah and Lisa. We entered the station, breathless and nervous. The receptionist looked at us with a mix of surprise and concern. "Can we help you?" she asked, standing up from her desk. "We need to talk to the police," I said, my voice trembling. "We have information about terrible crimes that are happening." We were taken to a room where two detectives began interviewing us. We told everything about Kat, the macabre rituals, the forced prostitution, and our desperate escape. At first, the detectives seemed skeptical, but as we provided more details and showed the marks of abuse, their expressions changed to somber seriousness. "We need to act quickly," said Detective Parker, a middle-aged man with a severe expression. "If what you're saying is true, those girls are still in danger." While the police organized an operation to investigate Kat's house, we were taken to a hospital for treatment. They found Sarah and Lisa, and soon we were all reunited, trying to find comfort in each other's presence. The police operation was carried out with precision. They raided Kat's mansion in the dead of night, catching everyone by surprise. Kat was arrested, along with several of her accomplices. The other girls still in the house were rescued and taken to a safe place. In the following days, the story gained media attention. Kat, the stunning blonde with blue eyes, was unmasked as a manipulative psychopath who used her angelic appearance to lure and destroy lives. Her network of crimes and abuses was exposed, and she would face a trial that would certainly convict her. The road to recovery would be long for all of us. The trauma and fear would not disappear easily, but at least we had the chance to start over. With the support of therapists and counselors, we began rebuilding our lives, knowing that justice was being done. As we watched the coverage of Kat's trial on television, we held each other's hands, united by the shared experience and the hope for a better future. Kat had tried to break us, but instead, we became stronger and more determined. Finally free, we knew the road ahead would be difficult, but we were ready to face it together.